Now, working in a diverse culture is very, very difficult. The golden rule of treating other people the way you want to be treated is no longer good enough. You know, if you really want to work in a diverse environment, certainly in our company, one of the things we talk about is the platinum rule. Treat other people the way they want to be treated. In today's globalized world, it's no longer good enough to treat other people the way you want to be treated because you've been socialized a certain way. And chances are other people in other parts of the world are not going to be socialized that way. So the leadership challenge here is you have to get to know the people who work for you so well that you know the way they want to be treated. And that's a big challenge in today's global world. That means you have to learn foreign languages. That means you have to learn about foreign cultures. That means you really have to get close to the people that you work with. And that's why the platinum rule is so important. I get ahead of myself on Dr. Deming. Dr. Deming is actually about this sixth point, which is ineffective strategies, systems, and culture are bigger barriers to achievement than the talents of people. What do I mean by this? Well, what I mean is when something goes wrong at the Procter & Gamble company, before I find someone to blame, I blame myself. And I ask myself, did I provide the proper leadership? Did I provide the proper strategies? Did I provide the proper systems? Did I provide the proper culture for those people to succeed? This learning, this lesson, came from work I did with Dr. Deming. In about 1983, I took Total Quality from Dr. Deming. In the Total Quality course, there was an exercise. Dr. Deming had a paddle, and he would give it to you, and on the paddle was drilled holes, and it looked like a ping pong paddle with holes. He also had a vat of beads. He had some red beads and some white beads in the vat. And he would scream at you. He'd say, go in there, McDonald, and get all red beads. And I would go in, shake the paddle around, trying to get all red beads. I'd pull it out. There'd be some white beads, some red beads. And we'd write down the number. So I thought what Dr. Deming was doing was teaching me statistics. You know, mean, median, upper control limit, lower control limit. And he was doing that. But he'd yell at me, go back in. And at this time, Dr. Deming was about 85 years old. It wasn't too short before he died. And he was yelling at me, screaming at me, and his arteries were popping out of his neck. He said, McDonald, your toolbox, get more beads. You know, I could never get all red beads. It was only after the exercise was over that Dr. Deming told us that the holes in the paddle were drilled different diameters, and that the beads, the red beads and the white beads, had different diameters. So no matter what I did, I was always going to get a few white beads. And then he said, think about that. That's a metaphor for what you do as a leader. What we do as a leader is we sometimes give people an ineffective strategy, an ineffective system, an ineffective culture, and then we yell at them to work harder to get the task done, even though the task isn't impossible to accomplish. So what we teach at Procter & Gamble is rather than blaming any individual person in the organization, as a leader, you need to understand, have you created a high-performance organization? We describe a high-performance organization as one that's based on purpose, values, and principles, the P&G purpose, values, and principles. You have to have technical competence. In other words, if you're in marketing, do you know how to advertise? If you're in design, do you know how to design great packaging? Then do you have sound strategies? Do you have robust systems? Do you have passionate leadership? Do you have a high-performing culture? If you've got those things, then you have a high-performance organization. Without those things, you won't have a high-performance organization. And if you don't have a high-performance organization, as the leader, you are the one who is responsible. So just say, no excuse, won't happen again, change it, and move on to create a high-performance organization. Number 7, after giving people the benefit of the doubt and blaming yourself first as leader, recognize in the end there will be some people who won't make it on the journey. Either they won't make it at Fuqua, they won't make it at P&G, and just be sure as a leader that your commitment to those people is to them as individuals versus to them as students of Fuqua or to them as P&G employees. Because I think that commitment is really important, and it's an important signal to the rest of the organization that when someone leaves, you care for them and you help them get on with their life in a different career or at a different school. Number 8, organizations must renew themselves. Or I think of organizations as biological organisms. Biological organisms grow, they change. And we as leaders have to constantly renew the organization. You know, those 41 companies that fell off of the Fortune 50 from 1955, the world changed around them, and they didn't change. At P&G, we often talk about the boiled frog parable. If you've read Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, one of the best business books written, on about page 25, he talks about the parable of the boiled frog. These companies became boiled frogs. Frogs, as you know, are cold-blooded. So if you take a frog and throw it into a pan of boiling water, the frog's body temperature won't change quickly enough, and it'll jump out of the pan. On the other hand, if you take a frog and put it into a pan of ambient temperature water and turn the temperature up slowly, the frog won't notice the change in temperature, and they'll end up dying. Now, I have nothing against frogs, and please don't try this at home. This is Peter's parable, not mine. So if you have any complaints about the treatment of frogs, write to Peter Senge at MIT. But the important lesson here is this is what happens to business. You know, how does Kodak miss digital photography? How does AT&T miss cell phones? What is it that's turning the temperature up on Procter & Gamble right now, and I'm not realizing it? That's why organizations have to renew themselves. That's why organizations have to change. At Procter & Gamble, we like to say, you know, we're going to keep the purpose and the values the same, but we're willing to change everything else in order to grow. Rosabeth Cantor wrote about this in her recent book called Supercorp. Jim Collins wrote about this in Built to Last. Great companies keep the purpose and values the same, but they're willing to change everything else in order to grow. Now, why is this relevant? Well, what I've done here is I've compared for you the day I joined Procter & Gamble with today. The day I joined, we were a $10 billion company. Today, we're about an $80 billion company. What's that multiple? 8. When I joined the company, we had 61,000 employees. Today, we have about 130,000. What's that multiple, roughly, in integers? 2. So if sales grew 8 times, employees only grew 2 times, how much has productivity improved? 4 times, measured sales per employee. That is a remarkable amount of change. That is a remarkable. And companies, if companies are going to succeed today, they have to constantly be improving their productivity because the world is changing. What's improved the productivity? Globalization. Yeah, globalization has created scale. That scale has resulted in growth. That's certainly one. Somebody said technology. Certainly technology. The kinds of jobs that we're doing today are very different than the jobs before. If you ever watch this video on YouTube, I love the video. It's called Shift Happens. I'm very careful in articulating it. If you watch the video Shift Happens on YouTube, there's a wonderful slide there that says, we're educating children today for jobs that won't exist when they graduate. Now, I know that's not the case here at FUCA because I know Blair's all over this, as is the faculty here, and we're really trying to create globally effective leaders for the future. But that's important. Now, if you get the productivity right, and if you get the growth right, and if you're willing to change, now I have to tell you a story. I'll break for a minute. When I joined Procter & Gamble in 1980, I joined in order to join a company where I could live and work in the same city my whole life and never have to move. I was leaving the Army. But if you look at my biography, I've spent 15 of my 29 years with the company outside the United States. So in 1989, when the company came to me and said, you know, we would like you to go on an international assignment to Canada, my response was, what did I do wrong? That sounds hilarious today because we're a global company. Over 60% of our sales are outside the United States. But look back, in 1980, it wasn't that stupid a thought. Only 32% of our business was outside the United States. Things will change. Change is inevitable. You as the leader have to change. You have to change. You have to learn new things. You have to improve productivity.